How are you doing, you wonderful nerd? For years now, many of you guys have been asking me to cover the story of how the Adventures of Superman radio show battled the KKK. The real, actual KKK. I figured it was a story people have heard to death by now, but there are plenty of false details going around, and dang it, I think we could use a little story of triumph over hate and bigotry. So you know what? Let's talk about the time when Superman launched an operation to bring down the Ku Klux Klan. This amazingly true tale involves a ragtag team of journalists, psychologists, and spies infiltrating the KKK, learning their secrets, and broadcasting them to millions of homes across America. So, since I'm going to be talking about a radio program today, we probably don't have too many images or video clips to cut to, so I guess we can try to keep it exciting with a change of scenery and way more Hamilton references than usual. So, bear with me. As I'm sure you know, Superman made his big debut in Action Comics #1 from 1938. In just 2 short years, Superman became an unparalleled success. The Man of Steel's comic stories were selling 2.5 million copies per month, his likeness was placed on any and all merchandise the company could think of, and he was floated in balloon form during a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. That story we actually already did a video on. With Superman skyrocketing into his role as a national icon, one man was at the center of his marketing success: Bob Maxwell, head of the Superman Incorporated subsidiary of National Allied Publications. But he wasn't quite satisfied with Superman's success just yet. Maxwell envisioned a children's radio program featuring the Man of Tomorrow entitled The Adventures of Superman. With Kellogg's Pep as their sponsor and the legendary Bud Collyer portraying the role of Clark Kent and the Kryptonian hero, the Superman radio show premiered its first episode on February 12th, 1940, with that familiar intro.
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman!
It wasn't long before The Adventures of Superman garnered over 4 million listeners. Bob Maxwell, as the producer of the show, knew how to tell stories that could captivate audiences. Behind the scenes, he demanded perfection from his team. Stories would have to be exciting and action-packed with tense cliffhangers that would keep listeners coming back for more. He needed the actors and the sound designers to deliver the highest quality performances. He pushed for nearly endless script rewrites until the story was able to hit the perfect beats. Behind the scenes, the radio program was teeming with remarkable talent in every aspect of production. The show's influence can still be seen in Superman's lore today, as it introduced core concepts like the name of the newspaper Clark and Lois work at, the Daily Planet, along with its editor, Perry White. It also introduced the character of Jimmy Olsen. Kind of. We'll probably make a tie-in video for that later, but most importantly, The Adventures of Superman introduced the world to his glowing green weakness, kryptonite. And if you're not tired of me pointing out previous videos I've made just yet, did a video on that one too. After years of Superman fighting monsters, gangsters, and of course classic World War II villains like Nazis and German scientists, the show encountered a pair of problems. Firstly, audiences were losing interest in the Man of Steel, facing off against foreign threats now that the war started to become less relevant. Secondly, comic books, superheroes, and kids radio were all under fire by critical psychologists who believed that these stories were adversely affecting the minds of children. Where the villains and circumstances of the stories might change, the solution was always the same: violence. Superman would punch his way out of every problem, teaching kids that violence is always the answer. The team behind The Adventures of Superman had to address these two issues. They needed a new villain who, in their defeat, could teach the children listeners important and applicable values. And, serendipitously, a clan of real-life villains had stepped into the spotlight once again. The first incarnation of the Ku Klux Klan had died out around the 1870s. While they undoubtedly committed thousands of horrendously violent acts upon black people and those who didn't entirely hate black people, there was a portion of America who, for whatever reason, saw the KKK as champions of the oppressed white race. In 1905, a novel titled The Klansman, a historical romance of the Ku Klux Klan, would inspire the 1915 propaganda film The Birth of a Nation. These stories not only sparked the revival of the Klan, but also introduced and standardized elements of the KKK, like their white costumes and the act of burning crosses. Later that year, on top of Georgia's Stone Mountain, a giant burning cross would signal the Klan's reformation. They would attempt this same stunt decades later as their membership numbers started to dwindle. Apparently, some news outlets would report on this event using words like eerie and mysterious and haunting, but As other reporters were captivated by the secrecy of these rituals, one writer saw them for exactly what they were: a way for weak men to feel like big boys. This man was Stetson Kennedy, a writer who embarked on a personal campaign to attack the Klan with his weapon of choice, ink. Using his typewriter, Kennedy wrote an endless stream of newspaper and magazine articles exposing the KKK's bigotry and false mysticism. He would correct and critique reporters who used fantastical language to describe the Klan. I mean, this was a guy who would criticize encyclopedias that recognized the Ku Klux Klan as a valid political party. He saw the power in words and would write like tomorrow won't arrive. Kennedy would write like he needs it to survive. Kennedy would write every second he's alive, every second he's alive, every second he's... I'm exaggerating a little bit, but by 1946, with the KKK attempting yet another publicity stunt in the Adventures of Superman radio program in full swing, Stetson Kennedy would play a critical role in aiding the Man of Steel in his fight against intolerance. As the Superman radio show was trying to think of new villains to face now that the standard Nazi wasn't cutting it anymore, the team had an idea. What if they could use Superman to tackle social issues? After the horrors of the Holocaust and the rise of the KKK, perhaps the Man of Steel could teach kids the value of acceptance and to reject those who spread hatred and prejudice. This would also solve the problem of the critics who condemned the show as they believed it was teaching children toxic morals. I mean, this was the solution the crew behind the Adventures of Superman was looking for. A new path forward to keep the show exciting and relevant. But with so many potential problems that could go wrong, they needed a team of talented minds to make sure this idea wouldn't backfire. And this is my favorite part of the story, guys. Like a scene from a heist film, the Adventures of Superman starts assembling a ragtag team of specialized minds behind the scenes to make sure they get everything just right. A big worry was that any story featuring Superman tackling social issues would come across as preachy and boring. But in the hands of Bob Maxwell, he'd make sure the stories would never lose their sizzle. He reportedly reviewed and rejected 25 scripts before the first episode aired. Maxwell knew that education was important, sure, but it couldn't overshadow the entertainment. To help weave in social commentary that was as accurate as possible, they brought in former New York Times reporter Ben Peter Freeman. He had written for The Adventures of Superman before, and his journalistic background would help to accurately ground the scripts in the reality of American hate groups. But factual accuracy was just one issue. The team was also worried that a child could tune in only for a minute or two and get the exact wrong idea. I mean, what if they heard an excerpt from a story that features intolerant characters and didn't stick around long enough to know that they were the bad guys? They might think prejudice is not only okay, but endorsed by Superman. Enter Josette Frank, a researcher at the Child Study Association of America. She would bring a psychological understanding of the minds of children to the table. Frank was a critic of comic books, but one who was open-minded and saw them as literature that could teach values to readers if used well. She also reached out to organizations like the Big Brothers of America and the National Conference of Christians and Jews for feedback on scripts to make sure the show would receive support from critics. With the major players in place, Operation Intolerance was a go. The Superman team didn't start by immediately fighting Klansmen, however. In their first installment, called the Hate Mongers Organization, they tested the waters by having the Man of Steel fight terrorists in an organization called the Guardians of America, who were more or less Nazis. They terrorized the city to stir up hatred within the community. Jimmy Olsen attempts to infiltrate the Guardians of America, but he is found out and nearly killed. Superman swoops in to save the day and confronts the gang at their headquarters, where he learns that their leader, Frank Hill, was actually a former Nazi spy by the name of Franz Hiller. Superman ends the story with this message.
Remember this as long as you live. Whenever you meet up with anyone who is trying to cause trouble between people, anyone who tries to tell you that a man can't be a good American because he's a Catholic or a Jew, a Protestant or whatever, you can be pretty sure he's a rotten American himself. Not only a rotten American, but a rotten human being. Don't ever forget that.
After the 25-episode run of the Hate Mongers Organization, the ratings for The Adventures of Superman were through the roof. It became the #1 children's show and garnered enthusiastic praise from newspapers and organizations across the country. Now the team was ready to tackle a new threat dressed in white. How did they know that their plan would work? They had a spy on the inside. Just a couple of years prior, Stetson Kennedy was still fighting the Ku Klux Klan with his typewriter. He had moved to Alabama and made connections with the Anti-Defamation League, who set up the mild-mannered reporter with his own secret identity as a traveling salesman under the name of John S. Perkins. As Perkins, he would infiltrate and rise up the ranks of the Klan to gather some intel. Accounts vary on exactly how the forces of Stetson Kennedy and Bob Maxwell came together, but however it happened, Worlds collided in 1946. As a burning cross lit the revival of the Klan, as Stetson Kennedy continued to rise through the ranks and report on his findings to the Anti-Defamation League and Bob Maxwell's team, their combined efforts would result in what is likely the most famous story told on the Superman radio program, Klan of the Fiery Cross. You can listen to the entire story right here on YouTube, link will be in the description down below, but here is a brief summary. A youth baseball team managed by Jimmy Olsen gets a new pitcher, a Chinese-American named Tommy Lee. Tommy's talents cause the former pitcher, Chuck Riggs, to move into more of a backup role, and Chuck is bitter about this. He complains about the seemingly harmless situation to his uncle, Matt Riggs, who is secretly the leader of a society known as the Klan of the Fiery Cross. Matt believes Tommy and his family, along with the rest of the non-white, non-Christians in Metropolis, are vermin.
Gosh, who are all these guys, Uncle Matt? And why are you wearing the sheets and hoods?
We're the Klan of the Fiery Cross, Chuck.
Klan of the Fiery Cross?
Right. We're a great secret society pledged to purify America. America for 100% Americans only. One race, one religion, one color.
So yeah, the story escalates pretty quickly. To drive them out of town, the Klan of the Fiery Cross does exactly what you would expect them to do from their name. They burn a cross in the front of Tommy's home. When that doesn't scare anyone away, they attempt to tar and feather Tommy, but Superman rescues him at the last second.
Wait a minute. What's that caught between those two rocks? That's Tommy. Down to him. Down!
Harry White from the Daily Planet offers a $1,000 reward for anyone who can reveal the identities of those belonging to the Klan.
I'll run a letter addressed to everyone in Metropolis and offer a $1,000 reward to anyone who can reveal the identity of a single cowardly member of that rotten gang of hooded murderers. Good. Swell idea. I'll smoke those skunks out from behind their sheets or my name isn't Harry White.
But surprise, surprise, they burn a cross on his lawn as well. Not only that, but the robed men capture both Perry and Jimmy Olsen. In an effort to shut down the whole affair, Chuck Riggs finally comes clean to Superman about his uncle's involvement in the Klan of the Fiery Cross. As the Man of Steel confronts the Klan and rescues Jimmy and Perry, Matt Riggs escapes and meets with his superior named Wilson. Matt wants to enlist help from Wilson to hunt down and kill the people who know his identity and could testify against him, and that includes murdering Tommy, Perry, Jimmy, and his own nephew, Chuck. But to Matt's shock, Wilson explains that they're not going to kill anyone. In fact, this whole thing has gotten wildly out of hand. Matt doesn't understand that to Wilson, the Klan of the Fiery Cross is nothing more than a business.
Your fool stunt cost us 10,000 new members who would have paid us $100 apiece for initiation fees and another $25 for robes and hoods. That means over $1 million would have split.
So what? What's money got to do with the spot we're in now?
What's money got to do with it?
Yes, after all, we're not in this only for money.
No? Is it possible that you really believe all that stuff about getting rid of the foreigners? That one race, one religion, one color hokum?
Hokum? Why, it's the absolute truth. We've got to save America from foreign elements.
I thought you had brains, Riggs, but obviously something's happened to you. You've become drunk on the slop we put up for the suckers.
Suckers? Who are you calling?
Our members, Riggs. The poor fish who want to hate and blame somebody else for their failures in life. The little nobodies who want to believe some of the race is inferior so they can feel superior.
I blast you, Wilson. You talk like a dirty foreigner yourself.
I'm running a business, Riggs, and so are you. We deal in one of the oldest and most profitable commodities on earth. Hate. Your mistake was when you forgot you were a businessman and began believing your own sales talk.
With his world shaken, Matt Riggs snaps and strangles Wilson to death. In one last desperate move, Matt attempts to kill Jimmy, Perry, and Chuck together as they all attend the championship baseball game. Matt sets up on a rooftop overlooking the game. He aims down his rifle and pulls the trigger, but Superman zooms in to deflect the bullets and capture the bigot, Matt Riggs, for good.
Oh, no, you won't, Riggs.
What are you doing?
Strikes are out. I'll take that rifle.
What the hell, Matt, look! Superman!
And just like that, Jimmy Olsen's baseball team wins the championship game! Oh, and the Klan of the Fiery Cross is defeated. But that baseball game, though. Despite what you may have gathered from my retelling, the story was incredibly well written, well acted, and well received. Bob Maxwell and his brilliant team pulled off the impossible yet again. They told a story with a valuable message without sacrificing any of the thrills listeners had come to love about the Man of Steel. Countless newspapers and organizations showered the Superman story with praise. Actor Bud Collyer, who portrayed Superman, had previously hidden his identity from the public, but he finally revealed his name, promising that the Man of Steel's campaign of racial and religious tolerance would continue. As the story of Superman versus the Ku Klux Klan became a legend that would be retold again and again for over 50 years, details slid into the tale that misreport Stetson Kennedy's contributions, and that's largely due to the fact that Kennedy himself is the one who wrote the most about it. It's important to remember that Stetson Kennedy was a writer and a folklorist. He knew how to use his skills to strip the mysticism away from the Ku Klux Klan and instead expose them as worthy of nothing more than ridicule. But that also occasionally meant spinning a tale that was engaging, sure, but occasionally self-serving. So yeah, the myth you may have heard about the Superman radio show revealing Klan code words to the public is not true, but the Klan of the Fiery Cross helped to open the public's eyes to the evils of the Ku Klux Klan. A few years passed, and the already dwindling membership of the KKK was left in shambles. It would be easy for us to give the adventures of Superman all of the credit here. I mean, it certainly makes for an entertaining story that's been shared across the internet many times, including, in this YouTube video. And of course, as someone who runs a channel about superheroes, I would love to leave the story as it is and say that the Man of Steel brought down the KKK, but the reality is messier and richer. The real heroes were federal and state prosecutors, relentless journalists, and groups like the Anti-Defamation League who all worked to stifle the Klan. Superman's role in all of this aimed to educate the country about deep-seated racism and to expose the KKK as a group of hate mongers. But is it really surprising that Superman would be the poster boy for tolerance and acceptance of one another? As author Rick Bowers brilliantly writes in his book Superman versus the KKK, on which this entire video is based, when the Man of Steel premiered, he, quote, offered a little bit to everyone. Coming from a distant planet, he was the ultimate foreigner. Raised in the Midwestern heartland, he was the quintessential American. Growing up in a small town, he was rural at heart, but moving to a big city, he became more sophisticated and worldly. He was both weak and strong. His meek, mild alter ego Clark Kent was a sheepish bumbler, but he was always ready to transform into the all-powerful superhero. End quote. Oh, hey, looks like we ran out of the green screen budget. Anyway, as I mentioned, the bulk of this info comes from the book Superman vs. the Ku Klux Klan by Rick Bowers. There's significantly more context and more details in that book. I highly encourage you to go check it out. If you want to know more, link will be in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Normally, I would ask you to subscribe, but sometimes YouTube doesn't deliver videos to you all, so I want to plug our Twitter instead. You can follow at NerdSync or at Scott Niswander. That's my personal one for updates on new videos and obnoxious amounts of quote tweets. In the meantime, check out some more of our videos that YouTube's computer brain guarantees you'll love. While you look those over, I want to thank our patrons, especially Christopher Lang, Keaton Lampert, Mike Harville, Kendra, Elizabeth Montzel, and the rest of the wonderful nerds who support us over at patreon.com/nerdsync. My name is Scott, reminding you to read between the panels and grow smarter through comics. See ya.